Right, so as I said there, the back page story on all the papers today: golf sells out, LIV pumps in billions as rival tours merge. I'm delighted to say Riath Al-Samarrai is with us this morning. Riath, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, chaps. Yeah, very well, thanks. A slightly fraught evening for what you're just mentioning there, but all is well.
What type of details are we getting at the moment about how the deal was done and actually what the future holds?
Okay, so dealing with the kind of first part of that, so we spoke to Jay Monahan last night. He's the commissioner of the PGA Tour and the sort of fairly central figure in all of this, which I'm sure we can discuss a little bit later. He might have just taken the mantle from Greg Norman as the sort of most mocked man in golf on account of what's happened in the last 24 hours. Now, in essence, he says it's been a 7-week process. We know that sort of peace brokers have been drafted into this. One of them was Amanda Staveley, who's been brought in on the PIF side. Of course, she's the Newcastle United director, so she's very well embedded in the sort of Saudi system of doing things. Now, there have been these sort of back channel conversations going on, parallel, of course, to furious litigation that's been flying back and forth between the PGA Tour and LIV, and also involving sort of the DP World Tour, so what was once the European Tour. They've also been involved in arbitration with LIV players. So we've had this frenzied landscape, fear and loathing in golf. Sport's never known anything like it. Now, they sort of brought in these peace brokers about seven weeks ago, and talks have started. They've really escalated in the last month, all of which has culminated in this bombshell announcement yesterday afternoon that the PGA Tour, DP World Tour, and LIV are now merging. Now, obviously, what people will have seen and heard in the last 24 hours is these are going to remain 3 separate entities as far as kind of competition goes, but they are all under one commercial umbrella. And I suppose the real upshot of it is that will be largely under the control of LIV. They're the ones who can be putting the money in, the Saudis rather. And I would say the sensible interpretation from all of this is that Saudi Arabia have just bought out golf. It's been a pretty dramatic day or so.
Sorry, the line kind of broke up there, but essentially the tours will be under the control of Saudi Arabia.
In a sense, yes. So they're going to be under this centralised commercial hub. The chairman of that is going to be Yasser Al-Rahman, who's the governor of the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, and indeed sort of Newcastle United, I suppose. So yeah, there are some who would argue that this has been the plan all along. The entire purpose of creating LIV it's been described to me in a sense as a Trojan horse. It was their way. It was Saudi's way of getting themselves into the landscape and being able to spread their wings once they got inside. So I suppose the other way it's been put to me is they came in through the back door, and now they've got the keys to the front door as well. They had this marginalised product. Now, in this commercial tie-in with the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, they're right there front and centre in golf.
Riath, the position of Jim Monahan as that PGA Tour commissioner now, is that being heavily called into question? Like, hypocrisy is a word that's been thrown around in the last 12 hours or so or more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. There was currently this week will be the Canadian Open. Rory McIlroy's there defending his title. So there was a players' meeting last night. Monahan told us that was heated and intense. A couple of players who we've spoken to have told us it was a few notches on from that again. We don't yet fully know McIlroy's position in all of this. He's going to be speaking today, so that's going to be interesting, given he turned down an offer in the region of £400 million to go to LIV. And might well now be asking himself, well, okay, I made that decision and I spent the better part of a year furiously defending PGA Tour, only for them to subsequently get in bed with the Saudi Arabians. What's going on here, guys? So we can understand that position, all of which puts Jay Monahan in a very awkward position. He's brokered this deal. He certainly signed off on it. He's the commissioner of the PGA Tour. And this is a man who has been very outspoken about LIV. He also took the step of bringing up the situation around 9/11. What does this mean if given Saudi involvement in 9/11? How can golfers in good conscience, etc., go and sign up with the Saudi Arabian Golf Tour? Now, these are incredibly powerful comments to make, and of course, he's now gone and signed up with the Saudi Arabians, and so he's left himself open to this accusation of hypocrisy. So you've got that aspect, on top of which you now have this question around his position. How can the players trust him? They were all kept in the dark on this. Almost, we saw people like Colin Morikawa, a two-time major winner, coming out on Twitter yesterday and saying he's finding out this news on social media, which is a remarkable situation. And on top of that, of course, he then told us last night that Rory himself, and of course the biggest name in the whole of the sport, Tiger Woods, only found out that this agreement was reached yesterday. So there are going to be some awkward questions for Jay Monahan in the background on all of this, and certainly all of the early feedback we're hearing is that the players are extremely unhappy about it.
It'll be very interesting to see what they can do. In the intermediate term, do all the events just go back to being 4 days and golf goes back to being golf, and LIV as a format disappears? Or do you expect in next year and the year after for there to be like a LIV swing where it's the 3 days, no cuts for the top players? Like, do we have any idea what this actually means on a practical level?
So at the moment, the short answer to that is no. It's all to be confirmed. There was very much a feeling yesterday when they put the statement out that they were announcing peace in our time, but with very, very little meat on the bones. There was very little sort of indication of what this is going to look like going forward. Subsequently discovered the tours it won't be one great big global tour. The unification, as it were, comes under this sort of, the pooling of commercial resources. So that's the kind of point in it. What happens next with LIV is going to be fascinating. Kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about the sort of theory that they were created as a Trojan horse, that lends itself to the idea that it won't exist in its current format for long. Sort of Jay Monahan also indicated in that direction to us yesterday that it won't, what the future looks like isn't going to be what the present is, if you follow me. They want to keep the team aspect. I quite how that manifests itself and at what time in the year that falls, I'm not sure, but
okay.
We could see a scenario where you have the PGA Tour, DP Tour, World Tour running as usual, and then you have sort of separate events whereby they run these team tournaments. They were very keen on the franchise model. There are people within the organisation who fully believe that team golf has a future on the regular calendar outside of the Ryder Cup. Having been to a couple of those events, I'm personally not convinced by that, but it's like a lot of things with this. It remains to be seen. Certainly, what we're going to see is these players moving a lot more freely between tours from the end of this year. So, someone on LIV will be eligible to come back over to the PGA Tour the DP World Tour players who resign their membership, they could reapply for membership. I think they'll still have to serve their suspensions that they were given in April and the quite severe fines they were given. They'd have to clear all of that before they could come back in. But the door will be open for them when that time comes.
Riath, this ends any what had been ongoing litigation between the two tours as well. Are we led to believe that that's a happy coincidence about this whole deal, or was that a significant part of the discussions?
Look, there were certainly people I spoke to yesterday who said, look, if this was an end game possibility all along, the litigation could be seen as a useful bargaining tool. I don't know if that was written into it from the beginning. This is sort of 4D chess kind of levels of Machiavellian intrigue at the moment, but it's looking at it, yes, in essence, it does end immediately. They've said that in the statements. The litigation all goes away, and we are talking about a number of cases. We're talking, the sort of the antitrust cases, all of this very, very complicated business with the PGAs. We're trying to sort of compel testimony from sort of key figures within the PIF, which had the potential to shine a huge light on this thing. It was all of that factors into the agreement that we saw yesterday.
All right, we've got to leave it there. Riath Al-Samarrai, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.